Hey everyone! Today on Son of a Binge, we have the wonderful Jessy Yates, one of the stars of Netflix's new show, a little hospital drama called Pulse. And we also have Rob Licuria back as one of our favorite guest co-hosts. And Rob looks like a DJ right now with his headphones. You're going to see this video, so I guess I don't have to describe that. And this amazing, very bingeable show takes place at a hospital in Miami. First of all, welcome, Jessy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really
Welcome.
stoked to be here.
Very excited to talk to you about this because, right now I feel like, it's the return of hospital magic. We've got the Pitt, we've got Pulse. They both start with B. I'll talk to you about that later. Why?
Luck of the draw, you know?
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what medical skills have you picked up from filming the first season that you have either applied to in real life or think you might be able to use?
That's a great question. I'm not a real doctor, surprising everyone here. I probably should not do any medical procedure on anyone, just because I'm not certified. I
Okay.
could, that caveat aside, I could probably give some pretty mean stitches.
Ooh.
I practiced stitching a lot. They have this like silicone thing that's supposed to like replicate skin. And I
Yeah.
practiced that a lot. And when I'm on set, I have an on-set craft. Sometimes it's like cross stitching. Sometimes it's I tried knitting, I tried crocheting. That's what a lot of people do. I didn't like
Yeah.
it, but mine is embroidering. And I realized
Ooh.
that
Like needlepoint?
yeah, like true embroidering, like because now most of
Wow.
it happens on a sewing machine, and I do it by hand. And I realized, oh, giving stitches is basically just embroidering. It's just hand sewing.
Yeah.
So it's just
Except
hand sewing
you
skin.
have someone screaming, maybe.
You numb them enough, you know.
I'm just thinking if you're like out in the world and it happens and then you don't have
Yeah,
numbing
yeah.
stuff.
I probably shouldn't do it in general. But I
Okay.
could if in a
Okay.
pinch.
All right.
Take a couple
Rob,
strands of my hair and really
yeah.
hygienic.
Yeah.
You know what's funny when watching all these shows, like I grew up watching like ER and like pretty much we've all seen Grey's Anatomy, and you feel like you've developed some skills. You're like, oh, I could do that. I could do that. And really, really you can't. It's like a very overwhelming environment.
There was a day I was when we were shooting in Albuquerque, we were maybe 2.5 months into the season, and I was out somewhere and somebody was having a stroke and they called the ambulance, and everything in me was like, oh my God, I can help. Like I was like, oh, I know how to, like assess a patient. And then I realized I was like, girl, you're not a doctor. You don't actually know these things. But I've never felt like an impulse to be like, okay, what do we got? Like, what do we need to do stronger in my life? So
Yeah.
yeah, it tracks. I've also been watching, when I was doing the show, I was watching ER from the beginning. So I was like in it.
Oh, isn't that a great binge?
Oh, it's so good. I mean, there's a million seasons. It just goes
Oh
on
my
forever. And there's
gosh.
22
Well,
episodes a season.
yeah,
So it's
actually,
you
I
imagine?
saw like on Instagram or something, it said that 25 years ago, Carol appeared for the last time when she goes back to Doug. And I was like, how old are we?
We
Like that.
old. Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah.
I
I'm
hate
sorry.
that.
I
I hate
didn't
that.
mean to upset all of us, but it was 25 years ago.
Oh God. That's
Okay,
horrifying.
so before we get to the pulse of it all, I always like to ask you, what show did you binge when you were younger?
Binges.
Yeah, or I mean, back then it was also
Okay,
like watching
so
weekly.
it's funny that we just talked about AR because every morning in the summer, I would watch 2 episodes of ER and then The Nanny. I think it was on TNT and it
Yes.
was like one right after the other. There was also
Yeah.
some Dawson's Creek in there, but I had to
Oh, of course.
sneak that because at some point we were like a parent walked in when they were hooking up. I don't know
Yeah.
who was hooking up, but like we were suddenly not allowed to watch Dawson's Creek anymore. So that became a harder thing. But that was
Yeah.
the first like chunk of TV that I watched like religiously every week.
That's the best. On ER, can I ask you who were the couples that you were rooting for?
Oh God. It was later seasons ER, but like early 2000s.
Okay. I gravitated towards Carter and Abby. I like them a lot.
I mean, anything that Carter does was amazing. I was anti-Luca. Like I remember that, but I was
Me
also
too.
like a child.
Really?
So what did I know?
Yeah. I was anti-Luca too. Did not do it for me.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm so bad about media because I will watch it and I will binge it, and then it will be like I've never experienced it. I do
goes
that with
in, it goes
movies
out.
all the time. Where
Yeah.
I mean, I've even had to do those Pulse. I've watched Pulse like 3 or 4 times now because I'm like, I was there. I've read those scripts. I know what happens. Like I know the shape.
I know.
Did I watch? And I feel that way about everything.
It concerns me because our short-term memories are just not good. Like I think our phones have destroyed everything.
Yeah,
We
and I'm
can't. There's
definitely
too
a child of
much.
the internet.
Yeah,
There's so much.
I do love that you're binging your own show repeatedly just to remember what happened.
Well, I think that it's not that like, because I know what happens, but I also, so many people have been talking to me about it, and I
Yeah.
remember my version of it.
Mm.
Like, I remember
Got you.
Harper's read on the situation because I had to, you know, like load that up. Harper had to have a very, very clear point of view about all the murkiness that is happening. And then I had to watch it a couple of it was maybe like the 3rd time when I could actually receive it as an audience member, as opposed to like either watching it from like the point of view of learning as an actor or of like kind of etch-a-sketching my brain of like all the homework that I had to do to like have the opinion that I have. And I was like, okay, what do people actually take away from this? And I think it was like maybe the 3rd or 4th watch that I was able to.
Okay, 3rd or 4th watch, you could watch it as like a
viewer,
non-biased viewer. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so describe your show in 30 seconds or less if you're trying to convince someone to watch it.
It is a sexy medical drama, kind of steamy. A lot is happening. And what I love about it is that nobody is making the most moral decision. So everyone is kind of in the muck of it and just trying their best to be a person and coming up against themselves and coming up against other people. So it feels really human.
That is a perfect description. So just so everyone knows, Jessy plays Harper, the sister of Danny, played by Willa Fitzgerald. And the premise of the show is actually quite complicated. So we learn right from episode 1 that Danny has reported her chief resident, Xander, to HR for sexual harassment. And through flashbacks, we learn it's actually quite layered and complicated. And we learn that they were in a relationship. And one thing that was strange for me is I found myself weirdly like almost rooting for them to figure it out because I was learning different things at different times. And, you know, which is kind of the creative part of this show. And also why I'm like annoyed at it because I'm like, oh, there's no obvious villain in this. But then it also made me feel a little uncomfortable because I was like, you know, I believe women and I believe Danny, but I also believe Xander. I believe Xander had a similar experience that wasn't what Danny felt. Like so like you said, everyone lives in the muck of it all. There's no kind of black and white to anything. It's a fully gray area. And there are people who are sometimes obvious villains. How would you describe Harper in the middle of all this?
Yeah. Harper is incredibly ambitious. She's very confident at what she does, but she is also sort of by the book. So in terms of her professional life, I mean, I'm a wheelchair user. She's a wheelchair user. Which is kind of an integral part of who she is because she has to be 10 times as good to get, you know, half the credit. And I think she has had to be incredibly like professionalism is kind of like her name of the game. So that extends to, you know, her relationship with and how she interacts with Danny and her complicated workplace relationship because Harper has never, you know, had the luxury of She hasn't had the luxury of having like a messy, like interpersonal life that's in her workplace, because she knows that people are always looking over her shoulder for a reason to discount her. Harper is the person you find out later in the season that encourages Danny to go to HR, because in Harper's mind, an unreported workplace relationship, especially one that is hierarchical, and especially one that is maybe a little manipulative, is like, that can't happen in her book. Like, that can't happen for her. And so therefore she like is anxious about it for her sister, and repercussions of it for her sister, which might not be that bad, or it might be really bad. And we just don't know, but she errs on the side of like, you have to do things by the book because
she's always had to do it that way.
She's had to. Yeah.
So how would you, like, how does Jessy view the relationship between Danny and Xander? And then how does, like, we kind of know how Harper does, right? Harper's like, no, this isn't right. But just from an emotional standpoint, like, did you find yourself rooting for them?
Okay, well, this is why I had to watch it 4 times, because so I know all these people. I know these actors. They're like my dear friend. Like, I love them as people. And then I also like have a Harper relationship. So being able to see what it was for real, like, I had to kind of like track it out on paper. And I think that it's pretty unethical. I think that maybe they should be in a relationship, but I think they need some couples therapy first. Because I do think that the way that the relationship began was a little manipulative. I think that Phillips is a really good guy, but he's not a guy who's ever had to really prove himself beyond, like, he's never had the risk that women in the workplace do.
The gender risk, he's never had the risk that slightly
financial,
less attractive. Well, also he's like super attractive. Everything is like handed to him. Did you guys ever see that 30 Rock episode where John Hamm was like the guy she was dating? And she's like, life is so different for you. You don't understand. And that is what Xander is to me.
Well, and ultimately, I don't think he's a bad guy, but I do think that the claim was warranted. So Jessy, come to the same conclusion that I think Harper does, but I think that Jessy, give him, like Xander, a lot more of the benefit of the doubt, because you just don't know what you don't know. You don't see the blind spots.
Great description. Robert, who were you rooting for?
Well, I mean, I've got to say, I wasn't rooting for anyone in particular, but when I watch medical dramas, I get so wrapped up in the storylines, like in the patients. And I sometimes forget that we're following, you know, the storylines between the doctors and the residents and so on and so forth. And I watched Pulse pretty quickly because in this family, we're a Grey's Anatomy family. I loved the Pitt. We watched ER. So this was great. When Reshma said, hey, we're going to chat with Jessy, why don't you give Pulse a go? I was like, okay, perfect. That's going to be very easy. And I loved the pace of this show particularly, and the production value. And it's really slick. It's really well produced, really well written, but I really loved the acting. I thought the whole cast, particularly all the guest stars that come on, that was going to be my first question, actually. What's it like to have these amazing day players come onto your set? And what was that like? Did you enjoy having all of these new people kind of bringing in a new kind of dynamic every day?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, most of my patients were kids. I think that Harper might go in a peds direction. Who knows? But like, it was, I mean, having scene partners that were kids who could act the house down was incredible to me, because I was like, oh shit, I have to up my game. But it was, I mean, even like day players, like or not day players, but guest stars, like our dad, Chris Mulkey, is a legend. And
so good.
I mean, like, he's like in Twin Peaks, you know, like just like an icon.
I know.
And he's also like the mayor of Venice in California. It's so funny. Everyone knows that man.
Really?
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Oh, I was like,
he's,
he really is?
oh
And
no,
then I
no,
was
no,
like,
no, no.
Okay.
But he's just like so
He's the guy.
he's the guy in this
Yeah.
industry. And
Yeah.
he's so beloved and so like hardworking and easy to work with. You know, he was doing a lot of physical work
Yeah.
because he's, you know, in real life, he's quite fit, quite healthy, you know, and he he would just turn it on like that. And it was because I am sort of a rookie. I mean, this is my second series regular job, and I'm like 2 years out of grad school. Working alongside pros like that was
Yeah.
amazing. And it also, because, you know, like I'm a series regular and they're coming in for an episode, it made me have to up my game, because if they can find their way into this family, this matrix, this world, this hospital that we've built in a week, I should be able to do it in 6 months, you know?
Yeah. I want to go back in time a little bit. How did this role come about for you?
Yeah. So I think that they auditioned for Harper much earlier in the process than they did for anyone else, because they went through a casting director who specializes in relationships with the disabled community. And I like got the breakdown. I was like, well, that's me. Crap. You know, it's always exciting and terrifying when you have a part that you're like exactly right for, because then, you know, like it matters more. It becomes more
Yeah, you're like, I
stressful.
have to get this. How can I not get this?
Yeah. And then maybe 3 days after that, I think my team and the casting director, who I have a previous relationship with, and who had cast me in a few other things that previously that year, like I think they wanted me to like get in the room early, because, you know, like the character description was sort of me to a T. And I went in like 2 to 3 days after I got the script. I was terrified because I was reading with Carlton and Zoe, and I didn't know it at the time, but all of the other producers were there too, like with their cameras off. And I read, Carlton gave me notes, we read again several times, and we talked for like 45 minutes. And it was a Zoom room. And you never know how Zoom auditions go. I usually think
you
that
can't gauge it.
Exactly. Well, and I'm so used to being able to tape, give my stab at the role, and then incorporate notes and go in another, like these days, the system is like, you have more time to metabolize the notes because you're not really going in a room. So it's not that live. You have a day or two. And this is the first Zoom audition I had had in a minute.
It's hard to like, you know, I hear people have to do chemistry tests on Zoom, and
Willa and
it's
Colin
very
did.
difficult. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, I think Willa was the only, because Willa and I, when they cast the show, we were the two New Yorkers. I'm currently live in LA, but I think she was the only person who did a chemistry read on Zoom. And
wild.
But sometimes
it is
it's
wild.
like when you know, you know, and I think that that's like so telling of their chemistry, right? Because they like, if it can transpire over Zoom, which is like, you know, we all know how to work it, but it's still like
I gotta say,
removed.
like from the pandemic, that's one thing I wish they would go back to in the room chemistry testing, only because like, first of all, if a show does really well and later at the end of the series, you want to release those chemistry tests, like imagine releasing this Zoom and like, you're not having on-screen kissing, like a screen test kiss or anything. It's just this awkward Zoom room that we were stuck in for 5 years. And it's just like, let's go back to that time where we had the in-person stuff, because that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, well, you can see the energy of a person. And I think that's probably why in my audition we talked for so long. Because normally what you can figure out in 30 seconds when a person walks in the room and you can just like feel their essence, you have to sort of ease into in a conversation. But yeah, that's how the audition went. It was
Awesome.
pretty early. And then I had like 2 to 3 months where I was like, how did that go? Because I didn't even know what the tapes looked like because I was on Zoom. I was like, I can tape again. Like, I don't know that went well. I can tape again. And they were like, no,
Yeah.
no, it's all
The
good. It's all good.
anxieties. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 to 3 months. Wow. So, what, once you did get the role, what hospital shows, like, I know you watched ER. I assume, did you watch Grey's Anatomy and stuff like that?
Yeah, I didn't rewatch Grey's Anatomy for this one. I watched it.
Okay.
I think I watched up to season 6
Mm.
when I was in high school, and then
Yeah.
I haven't gone back to it since. But
Yeah.
that's
Don't worry. You just have
the next one.
29.
ER just gave me enough material to work
Yeah.
with. So
Definitely
Plenty.
enough. And you know, you have 29 seasons of Grey's Anatomy to go
It's
back to at any
nothing.
one time. I mean, it's just
true.
It'll never end.
but what other characters did you pull from to create Harper, would you say? Were there any?
I think that it's funny. In Grey's Anatomy, or not Grey's Anatomy, in ER, I got when we started shooting, Carrie came on the scene because I,
Yeah.
like I was started from season 1, and she comes in back way of season
Yeah.
2, I think.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's it. That's it. And I had watched the show, I knew her character, but I didn't, when I was a kid, I didn't watch from the beginning. I just like watched what was on TV. And
Okay.
the way that people respond to her character and let's call it professionalism. Some might call it kind of a stick up your ass, but I will call it professionalism
Yeah.
that she has at the start of like when she enters, was really, really interesting to me. So that was it. But then otherwise, like, I don't often take from other characters. I usually like take from elements of myself and then like people in my life. I shadowed a doctor who used a chair at Mayo, but then I also followed a lot of residents like on Instagram and stuff, and was on like medical TikTok and stuff, because I think more so than like the actual like medicine, which we had medical advisors and we were getting like extensive medical packets and videos and everything of like procedures and stuff, but more so the vibe of a hospital and the vibe of the personalities who gravitate towards each specialty and each department was really what I was trying to figure out. And emergency medicine doctors are adrenaline junkies.
Yeah.
They are like they are the adventure dads of the hospital.
Yeah.
They, they go whitewater rafting as their like team building energy like trips, and they go like they're like the backwoods guys. A lot of them are like ex-military medics. I know that
Yeah.
our executive producer slash like on-site doctor and writer, Josh Troke, was Air Force. He was like a Air Force medic. So it's a type of personality who is like kind of courts that energy, courts the chaos, and can be very calm in chaos, but who knows what the rest of their life is looking like, I think maybe they're good at chaos for reasons, for things that have taught them how to be good in chaos, like past trauma or chaotic childhoods or whatever. So that was really informative for me.
So I love that you pulled a little bit from Carrie. So what I do love about Harper's story is that it's not about, oh, she's in a wheelchair and that's her whole entire story. I love they show the challenges around being in a wheelchair for her, and how you make it through the day. But they don't, no other television show really depicts that well, like historically. And until you said Carrie, I had even forgotten that Carrie, used to use that crutch. Like because same with Harper, they're just such strong characters that you're like, oh, that's something. And that's how, honestly, how the depiction should be. Rob and I probably a few days ago saw an article the other day that said the majority of characters with a disability on television are played by actors without a disability.
80%.
Yeah. Crazy.
80%, which is unbelievable. So
Yeah.
now I know you grew up in Ohio, and the internet says you went to Yale School of Drama,
I
and you were
did.
the first wheelchair using student. That's the first thing that comes
Yeah.
up about you.
How is
Yeah.
that possible?
Yeah, no, I went to NYU for undergrad, trained in theater, and then a few years ago I went to Yale, which is probably one of the most historic like acting programs, like that and
Yes.
Juilliard.
Phenomenal.
And like at least in the States. And yeah, no, that program was started in the 1950s, and everyone who's, I guess anyone has like sort of come through it in one way or the other, or who has done shows at Yale Repertory Theater. And none of that infrastructure was accessible when I got there.
Gotcha.
They had to retrofit the two main theaters to be accessible when I got
Wow.
there,
Wow.
which both means that no students could have come through there, but then also no professional actors, because it is one of the biggest regional theaters in the country,
Yeah.
which is a little startling. It's really, really unsettling. And I think that these training programs are kind of pipelines to the industry, and they sometimes act as gatekeepers. And it's kind of changing now because you have the internet and like, you know, you can be a kid from Cleveland and like get seen by having a TikTok. But for years that was not the case.
Not at all.
And you're also, I found that like my acting could have been exactly the same, or could have been way better, or way worse, who knows, after I graduated. But just by virtue of graduating a program like that, people pay attention to you in a different way because they trust you. Like you're vetted.
Exactly.
So how many disabled actors are we not giving the opportunity to become vetted, to be seen as professionals? And it is, I think it's wildly frustrating, because beyond training in terms of Hollywood, we love disabled stories. Half of the Oscar winners in the last like 30 years won Oscars for playing disabled characters. The only disabled actor or deaf or disabled actor to win an Oscar up until Coda was Marlee Matlin. That was 30 years ago.
Oh, you're right. She kind of carried
so
that
true.
on her own. And I mean, it's the same as you. That's why I was so surprised when it says like the first. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's not like you're not like 98. Like this has just happened. It also says that, you know, I know you got your start in theater, but you dipped your toes in burlesque, and you had like a very unique
oh my God,
stage name.
You did a deep dive.
I did a little deep dive on you.
We know
Can you
everything.
just share with everyone what your burlesque stage name is, if it doesn't embarrass you too much? But I think it's so creative.
I was performing under this name for like a while, and I was also making a lot of experimental theater. But so I have cerebral palsy. And that's important to know about this staging.
Exactly.
And my what I would call my performance art name is Cerebral Pussy. I have not performed under that name in a long time, but there are people in the New York theater scene who would not know Jessy Yates, but they would know Cerebral Pussy.
That's amazing.
So
I'm in New York, and I just want you to know.
I love that.
It's
so
a legendary name. To kind of wrap up a little bit, you were so fantastic in this show. The show, like I said, is so bingeable, and so like I can't wait. I hope you guys get a second season so we can find out, you know, what are some of the challenges that you faced as an actress in this industry who is in a wheelchair, and what are some of the ways that you're like, I actually am fine. I'm better than fine about this, because people don't talk about it. It's sort of, I feel like, a superpower in many ways, and it makes you really unique and stand out. And that's one of the reasons I love the show, because Harper's story is that. It's like, it's not just about someone in a wheelchair. It's about this amazing young person.
Yeah, I love that question. I think that a lot of the challenges are just being seen for things. Like getting in the room has been the hardest part, compared to my, counterparts in similar parts of their career. I mean, I've had like 4 auditions this year. And because, but the lucky thing is that it's sort of a weed out for the jobs that like aren't that interesting anyway. I always say that my career is probably going to be one of quality over quantity, because I can't blend in, I can't play cop number 3 running to their car, but disability gives you so much more of a window into humanity that even if I'm not playing a character who has a disability, every character that I play will have a disability, because just by virtue of my existence, unless it's like voiceover. But not every character will be scripted to have a disability, so not every script will like attend to it, and that's fine.
And define you that way.
Yeah. And I'm actually I'm interested in those projects right now, because what I'm interested in is how disability enriches a character, how people may respond to that character. If you have a love triangle and one of those people is disabled, suddenly there's a new power dynamic involved. Even if you don't address it in the writing at all, as long as the other actors activate it and it's allowed to be part of the room, it makes it so much more interesting of a story, and a story that we really like don't see enough, or choose not to see. I think I would prefer to say it that way, because 29% of Americans have a disability, and we just choose not to interact with it. So I think that it's a really good, and I mean, in my own personal life, it's a great litmus test for humanity, right? Because like people who, I date, or my friends, like they have to have a level of patience, or a level, not saying that like I'm deeply annoying or something. Maybe they have to have patience for other reasons, but
they need patience for me too.
Right, see, we need it for everyone. But it's sort of like, in the way that it weeds out the jobs that I wouldn't want anyway, it weeds out the collaborators that I wouldn't want anyway.
Exactly.
It weeds out the people in my life. And I think that also informs the characters that I play. So I don't know. I think it's just like fodder for storytelling, in a way
it's
that
fantastic. And let me tell you, this season 2, we're gonna need like a relationship for Harper. I'm just saying.
Who knows? Who knows?
All right,
Fingers
Jessy,
crossed.
to wrap, can you share with us your favorite behind the scenes story from filming? Something funny that may have happened that you can tell us?
Oh my God. I learned how to open a champagne bottle on set. I had never done a night shoot before, because my previous job was kids and family, and so we weren't like doing obscene hours for the children. So this is my first night shoot. Everyone is deliriously tired. We are so cold. It's because we're shooting night stuff for Miami. We're in Miami clothes, but it's Albuquerque, which is desert. So the nights get super cold in Albuquerque. So I'm trying to like do this quick scene that's so not about Harper. It's just like all she has to do is pop a bottle of champagne. And I broke 4 champagne tops of the bottles. And then several times I would pop it. And it wasn't an actual bottle of champagne, but it did, like, it was supposed to make the pop, and there was like something fizzy in it. And there were several times where, thank God they were using fizzy water as opposed to like something of another color, because I did get it sort of everywhere. So everyone is trying to like get home, and it's 3 a.m. and I can't open a bottle of champagne. And that really kind of bonded us for life,
Yeah. So season 2, you will not be opening any.
No, I know how to do it now. I know how to do it now. I don't know. Lots of practice.
We'll have to see the blooper reel. Jessy, thank you so much. This was so much fun. Let's keep our fingers crossed for season 2 of Pulse, but you rocked this first season, and what a great story you guys told.
Thank you so much. Amazing. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.